What joke with your significant other landed you in the doghouse? 1. I told my wife that her identical twin sister is hot. I obviously meant it as a joke, because they're identical? But she did not like it at all. Also, I do not think her sister is hot. They might look the same, but their voices are different, and her sister talks like a valley girl, which is a huge turnoff for me. And my wife is an angel. 2. My wife got a yeast infection about a year ago, and I told her that I always wanted to be married to a woman of culture. Definitely not worth it. 3. An ex-girlfriend of mine sent me a photo of herself joking about how she looked ugly. I was supposed to say no with a lot of extra O's, but it came out as MOO with a lot of extra O's instead. I was never able to live that down. 4. 20 years ago. First girlfriend. I had just cleaned my car, my dogs were wet and made it stink, so I worked for hours on it, then got it detailed. My girlfriend and I were at a lake. I will just let my hair air dry in the car on the way home, and I said, no, don't do that, I just got the smell of wet dog out, in front of my friends. 5. The first time she handed me one of our children's clothes and told me to put them on, meaning to put them on the child, and I said they wouldn't fit me, she laughed. The second time, a little chuckle. On the 100th plus time, we're on now, she hates it. I can't stop it though. 6. We were in a fight and my wife yelled at me, "Are you freaking stupid?" I replied, "Sometimes." 7. When we were preparing our mortgage, I quipped that I wasn't worried about a 35-year mortgage because I'd be dead before that. My wife was not happy with that one. 8. We stopped at a gas station and she asked me to grab the largest water they had. I came out with a gallon jug. She was not pleased. 17 years later, when she asks for a bottle of water, I ask, "The largest one they have?" And I get an "F you" reply and a laugh from her. Edit. Another way to put yourself in the doghouse: tell your wife your comment about a joke you played on her 17 years ago is trending. Glad everyone can laugh at my expense. 9. My wife didn't think she was as beautiful as she used to be. I assured her she was and said her whole family is smoking hot. She has only sisters. What I meant to say was she has great genes and should not worry. As soon as I said it, the look on her face meant she wasn't thinking about genes. 10. I made a joke about me potentially dying from ass cancer. I had completely forgotten my girlfriend's dad had died from colon cancer. My brain just thought ass cancer sounded funny. I didn't process it far enough to connect those dots. Anyways, I decided to retire jokes about any kind of terminal illness, and became a better, more sensitive person for it. A lesson hard but well learned. 11. So my girlfriend did jiu-jitsu, and she's quite strong. And she had a guy in a leg lock he was unable to break despite being more experienced in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and at least 50 pounds heavier than her. The dude said, "I should be able to break this hold, but you've just got these huge beefy legs." Weird that the dude is still single. Anyway, she'd told me this story and we had a laugh about it. When we first started dating, we were trying to keep a low profile. We'd both fairly recently gotten out of long-term and ugly relationships. I, in particular, didn't feel the need to announce our courtship to the world. Didn't have the urge to hear a lot of other people's opinions about how I spent my time. We were laying in bed one day and she asked, showing genuine grace and vulnerability, if I was ashamed to be seen with her. And, thinking I was being funny, I replied, "Because of your huge beefy legs?" She did not think it was as funny as I did, and it was quickly my turn to practice escaping a BJJ hold. 12. My ex was yelling at me when I draped a towel over her shoulders like a cape and said, "Now you're super mad." She didn't appreciate that. 13. I remembered another instance with the same ex. Her mother called her on the phone one day after they had been fighting, so she didn't want to talk to her. She asked me to answer the phone and pretend like she was busy, and I said okay. Well, when I answered the phone, I don't know why, but I felt like pulling a prank on my ex's mother, so I answered the phone with, and I quote, "Bullock's Crematorium, you kill M, we grill M. Are you calling about our 2-for-1 deal?" This was about 7 years ago, so caller ID wasn't that common in the rural area we lived in, so her mother didn't know how to react, and you can only imagine how my ex reacted. Needless to say, I loved that prank. 14. My ex once dressed in winter clothing and said something to the effect of, "I bought this 10 years ago and it still fits." I said, the scarf. 15, on their anniversary, my dad will always say something like, yep, 40 years of wedded bliss. Which is fine, except they've been married for almost 60 years. When anyone notices, he just says, what, they weren't all good years. 16, I worked in the hospital for 20-odd years. One day I got a new set of glasses which my wife looked at and said, boy, those look sexy. My reply was, yeah, I guess I'll have to wait and see what the nurses have to say. That was the wrong answer. 17, ex-girlfriend's husky got shocked by biting into a loose plug and burned his tongue. He was otherwise alright. A week later, the dog was just acting chill on the couch and she was concerned because he was usually hyper. Her mom told her he was fine, but I told her, he's probably low on battery, you should try plugging him in. Yeah. That was the last joke I made in that relationship. 18, we were in the same profession, arguing about a concept. She also happens to have a driving record so bad that she was put in the risk pool for car insurance. She was wrong in the argument and told me I should have known. I actually took that class, to which I countered, well, you also took driver's edition. 19, she asked me what she danced like, and I asked her if she ever played The Sims. Oh God, she did not like that. 20, my wife had recently started her period, unbeknownst to me. I tried to initiate sexy time, to which she stopped, but I told her I didn't mind because I like my eggs scrambled. She didn't take kindly to that for some reason. 21, we were at the airport checking in our bags and had our dog with us. The woman working behind the desk pointed to our dog and said, is he a pet? And the girlfriend replied, no, he's an emotional support dog, to which I added, and I'm her financial support dog. The worker cracked up but my girl did not think it was funny. 22, on my first date with my now ex-wife, we were stopped at a crosswalk. She turned to me and gave me a big smile and said, you've got that Clydesdale walk. Then looked at me like she really hit the mark with that. I paused and said, did you just call me a horse? Her face dropped from a happy smile to a horrifying shock so quickly. No, she said, they're beautiful creatures, I just meant you were beautiful. It was clearly meant as a compliment, so we just laughed about it. But she was rocked that her compliment didn't land as it sounded in her head. 23, we were sitting on the deck with friends, where I just put up a new bird feeder and my wife says, he did it because he knows my favorite bird is a hummingbird. I replied, yep, because I know it's definitely not the swallow. She was not amused. 24, I made her think we were related. I'm Australian, and she's from Sweden. When we were engaged, I found out in a conversation with her brother that her family came from a certain area and had an ancestral farm there going back hundreds of years. She didn't know that I knew this, so I made up an elaborate story about how my family originally came from Sweden and had to leave their ancestral farm due to some dispute. Then when they arrived in Australia back in the early 20th century, they changed their name from her grandmother's family name to what it is now. But I'd like to visit this place one day because I might have some kind of distant claim as a direct blood relative of that family. She bought it, hook, line, and sinker, and went white in the face when I told her the name of the farm and her ancestors' family name. We've been married 20 years and she's still mad at me for that one, but it was totally worth it. 25, she hates when I make jokes about the kids. Like when she is putting lotion on the baby, and I say, it puts the lotion on its skin. Naturally, I do this all the time. 26, I called my wife my ex-girlfriend. She was not thrilled. They apparently don't appreciate being called the first wife either. 27, my wife is 5 years older than me. At a family party, one of her cousins called her a cradle robber. I said, no, it's not like that, I'm a tomb raider. My wife thought it was hilarious, but her family has questioned me ever since. 28, my partner loves horror movies. She likes rugging up on the couch, in the dark, and feeling the tension of a good creepy story. She was very much looking forward to a movie called It Follows, which had amazing reviews. We put it on one night and it just wasn't that great. She was extremely disappointed by it. Since it was so late, she decided to duck out to buy some ice cream to console herself with her disappointment. When she returned home, I had hidden behind the front door covered in a blanket. The house was still dark, and just as she walked in the door, I rose up out of the corner hissing like a demon and spreading the blanket out like wings. She gave this ear-piercing scream, just abject terror, and then collapsed into waves of laughter when she realized it was just me freaking with her. It was one of her favorite scares ever. So then, a year or so later, I was working a night shift on an ambulance and just happened to be passing near home while free. Remembering that she likes scares, I stopped by home, snuck up to our bedroom window, and banged and scratched on the window briefly before disappearing. Then I got dispatched on a job and completely forgot about it. In the morning, she told me how scared she had been because someone had been banging on the window while she was home alone. I came clean and admitted it was me freaking with her and she was furious. I admit it would have been better if I'd acknowledged it was me soon after giving her the scare, but I'd got distracted. Completely my screw-up. She was pretty mad at me for that one, and I was just very poorly trying to give her another giggle scare like I had the previous time. 29, she was saying, can you imagine what you'd do without me? Just imagine all of the, when I cut her off with, money I could have saved. We were having a facetious and playful argument but this quickly made it go south. She got over it eventually and it became an inside joke. 30, I made a big forehead joke about a picture taken of her at a bad angle. Turns out my old lady got teased all through school for having a 5 head. 31, my wife was a gestational surrogate, she carried twins for another couple. After the twins were born, I went with my wife to a post-delivery follow-up doctor's appointment. At one point, the nurse asked how the babies were doing. I said, they're no longer with us. Long pause, they're now with their parents. His wife was not amused. 32, when our first daughter was about 3 years old, I did the pull my finger bit with her. My wife got so pissed at me for it. I never understood why. The kid was amazed. 33, on a work trip, I messaged, how's my sweetheart today, and she responded about what she was up to. I replied, I meant Sadie, our dog. Tipsy me thought it was funny. 34, once you turn 40, I'll trade you in for 2 20s. 35, not so much a joke, but years ago my wife and I needed to drive across town so I could help a friend with something. It was about an hour-and-a-half drive. I wanted to leave our house at 7 a.m. but my wife didn't want to get up that early, and insisted that we leave at 8 a.m. So I agreed and waited for her to go to sleep the night before. Then I got up and changed every wall clock, watch, car clock, and phone to read an hour later than it really was. So when we got up at 6:30, she thought we were getting up at 7:30. When we got to my friend's house, at some point she saw a clock and figured out what I had done. She was really, really pissed at me. 36, my wife loved the movie, Babe. I used the famous quote, that'll do, pig, after sexy time. 37, I got my wife with the old dribble can trick. I took my pocket knife and drilled a small hole in the side of her can of Diet Coke. She took a sip and some spilled onto her shirt. She had no idea about the hole and tried again. I busted out laughing at her reaction, and got the cold shoulder for a while. 38, you know the whole celebrity freebie thing? Like getting a hypothetical free pass to shag someone famous? Well, my ex told me hers was Keith Urban, and asked me who mine would be. I said the hot neighbor with the big rack. 39, I was driving in a car with an ex years ago and saw one of those trailer houses being carried by a massive truck with a sign that read, wide load. So of course, my lizard brain decided to say, we should put that sign behind your butt. Somehow I thought it was a compliment. 40, I told my wife the following joke, what do nearsighted gynecologists and puppies have in common? Wet noses. That joke confirmed that her sense of humor is not the same as it once was. 41, back in college, I dated a woman who wanted to go to law school. I told this one at a party, and it didn't go well for me, what's the difference between a lawyer and a bucket of crap? The bucket. 42, I told my wife she's the only one I've ever been with. All the others were 7s and 8s. 43, one of her close friends was in a same-sex marriage and she asked me how I viewed lesbian relationships. Apparently, in 4K was not the right answer. 44, we were at the grocery store, in the cereal aisle, and I saw some oatmeal that was labeled as thick and rough. Since there was another couple nearby, I said out loud, oh, hey, grab me some oatmeal. The one I like. Because I love my oatmeal how I love my women, thick and rough. Then I high-fived the other guy, but both of us got icy cold stares from our ladies. 45, not with a significant other, but with my best friend. She was pregnant and was wearing a nice dress that looked remarkably similar to a can of Arizona iced tea. I pointed it out in a Facebook comment and she got really pissed at me. Her husband laughed and reacted at it too. She forgave me for it, but she also has no problem raking me over the coals about it. However, she never wore the dress again, which sucks because she really did look nice in it. 46, when I was bartending years ago, I had a regular ask me for the best joke I've ever heard. I said, "How can you tell your girlfriend is getting fat? She fits into your wife's clothes." My wife had just walked into the bar from the side door. I didn't see her, and she heard the joke. My regular fell out of his bar stool laughing. Needless to say, she wasn't happy. 47, we were arguing about something. She said, "I just wish you could see things from my perspective." I replied, "I have, and your perspective sucks." 48, I regularly rip massive farts in front of my wife and kids and blame whoever is furthest from me as a joke. Gets hearty laughs every time. When I did it out of muscle memory while her mother was there and also the farthest away from me, the kids laughed heartily. The wife, not so much. 49, my wife absolutely loves to crack my joints, so I called her my crack whore. It did not go over well. 50, when my first kid was born, my wife was like, "Ah, isn't she adorable?" And I replied, "Yeah, kind of like how a little old man is adorable." The delivery nurse was washing up in the sink, and I saw her stifle a chuckle and double over a little. My wife didn't think it was as funny. 51, we were having a cookout, my side of the family plus friends. My dad, who is an amazing grandpa, has about 30 bottles of bubbles. He's just handed some out to all the kids and started to show the youngest of them how to use the wands, when my wife walks over and exclaims, "Oh yeah. I love blowing bubbles." I lean into my brother and tell him, her pet name for me Bubbles. He starts laughing hysterically, which makes me laugh too, and my wife is now defending her love for blowing bubbles, which only makes us laugh harder. Finally, she stops and demands to know what's so funny about her wanting to blow bubbles. My nephew, who's 4, must have overheard me and stated very matter-of-factly, "Uncle Brazilian's nickname is Bubbles." Now everyone starts laughing. Except for my wife. 52, this one actually got me in trouble. My sister-in-law got married when our son was about 3. Naturally, my wife was heavily involved in her sister's wedding, so he was with me most of the day. My wife gets up to do a speech and my son is not having another second away from mommy. So she's trying to hip-hold him and a microphone both while in a dress, heels, and all that. My mother-in-law decided to help out and take the boy. During the handoff, my son lets out a man fart. I mean, this thing had bass to it. Plenty of air, nice control, impressive. And the microphone picks it up in full glory. Everyone kind of chuckles and my mother-in-law does the typical pearl-clutching nervous laugh and looks out at the crowd while uttering, "Oh my, well what do you say?" My little man looks her dead in the eye, points his pinky to her, and says, "Pull my finger?" I could feel the pure anger radiating from my wife since she knew I taught him that. It was like standing too close to a bonfire. 53, we were painting a ceiling, and my wife and I were trying to get pregnant at the time. While painting, I told her to stand on the bed and pull the string on the fan. It gently hit her in the head and she fell onto the bed. I was dying laughing and said, "Well, the good news is that I'm never gonna have to pay Stanford tuition." She was mad for a day or so. 54, we were watching the Miss America pageant several years ago. The young woman who won looked a lot like my wife. I said, "Wow honey, you could be Miss America's mother." That was not the right compliment. I know that now. 55, when I was young, I used to joke with my mother by pretending that I was poisoned when I ate something she cooked. I would go into dramatic spasms, gasping, and throw myself out of my chair. Hilarious stuff. When I met my now wife, I thought it would be a good idea to do the same after she cooked me a meal. Turned out that both of her parents were epileptic and her father used to have very violent seizures when she was young. I scared the hell out of her. 56, when I was a teenager, our golden retriever puppy somehow got to my birth certificate and shredded it. My dad was laughing his butt off and said, "See? Even the dog thought you were a mistake." I laughed too, but Mom wasn't pleased. 57, I said, "Your hair looks beautiful, can I touch it?" and then proceeded to run my finger above her upper lip. Not funny. 58, she cooked something and I told someone, "It's homemade, and this homemade it." I only said it because of a few days before I heard her say it about herself and laugh. Apparently, it lost its humor when others were around. 59, cat bit my wife's chin and I asked, "Which one?" 60, probably my best ever George Costanza moment at the twilight of a 4-year relationship. My then girlfriend and I were driving through the country on the way to a much-needed romantic getaway. Suffice it to say we were not getting along. We stopped in at an artisan food shop, and at the cash register, I noticed a countertop display with barbecue sauces. One sauce just so happened to be called jerk in a jar. It was a serendipitous moment. I picked it up, turned to her while holding it up, and said, "Hey babe, the jerk store called and they said you're back in stock. Jammed you in a jar." I was dying at my own joke, and she was chuckling. Until we looked over at the disgusted faces of the 2 cashiers/owners who did not find my joke as amusing as I did. My girlfriend stopped laughing. We left the store. The rest of the weekend went further downhill from there, and we were broken up within a month. I did buy the jerk in a jar though. 61, she's currently pumping breast milk for our baby. She pumped a whole lot once, like twice the normal amount. I complimented her by expressing my surprise. But I said, "Holy cow." 62, my girl asked if she's curvy. I told her no, she's more curvy than curvy. 63, I was dining with her and her parents and she commented about the strong smell of fish. Then she gets a, "Close your legs," in response. It wasn't me though, it was her dad, forever the jokester. She was mad at me for laughing and high-fiving her dad. 64, a few years ago, I told her that if she mowed the lawn, would mow for the remainder of the summer. She was kind of pissed after mowing when I told her it was the last day of summer that day. 65, I asked her to, "Hand me that rag over there please," and she was like, "It's not a rag, it's a dish towel." My response was, "Yeah, well sounds like you're on the dish towel." 66, in college, I dated this girl who was a virgin, while I was not. Before we did anything, she wanted me to get an STD test. I knew I was clean, so I was fine with it. So I get the test and when I call the place to get my results, we were sitting at this table together. The doctor told me I was clean and hangs up, but my girlfriend didn't know. And here's where I got the idea for a joke. I say, "Okay. Yeah. Oh, now that one, is that treatable?" I never even saw her hand coming, she slapped me so fast. 67, my wife is not amused when I introduce myself as a proud father of 4 kids. Since we have 7. 68, my wife and I worked at the same company. A colleague of ours asked if they could borrow her for a meeting whilst we were at lunch. I responded, "Of course, just make sure you bring her back with a full tank." That got a resounding laugh from all who heard, except her. 69, she's just gotten back from having an IUD put in and told me the OB said no sex for 48 hours. My response, "What did your dentist say?" did not go over too well. 70, we were at a pet adoption at a strip mall pet store and decided to adopt a little dog. After playing with it for a bit and completing the adoption papers, we get in the car ready to leave and the tiny dog puked all over my wife. We had a bit of a drive, so I ran into a Ross store to get her a clean shirt. Came back with a ridiculous wannabe urban wear t-shirt with "So Lit" written across the chest. I thought it was hilarious, but not her. Recently she got sick and puked. When she came out, I just said, "So lit," and she nearly died. So at least she laughs about it now. 71, wife was going to doctor for a rapid heartbeat, and asked, "What would you do if I died?" I responded with, "Every housewife in the neighborhood." She did not find it as funny as I did. 72, our friends are all starting to have kids now, so I have this clever comeback for when one of them asks us about kids. I say, "Yeah, we can't have kids. At least not the way we do it." Always gets a big laugh. Then this one time my mom asked us about kids during a family dinner. The wife wasn't amused. Brother laughed his ass off though. 73, my girlfriend asked, "Hey, can you take the trash out?" I said, "Sure, where do you want to go?" 74, apparently telling my 5-year-old daughter that her unicorn mouthwash was made from real unicorns wasn't a good idea right before bedtime. 75, my wife's cousin suffered through a short but horrible marriage with a physically and verbally abusive guy, and when enough was enough, she sought protection at a battered women's shelter in the city. The cousin left that shelter recently and my wife wondered aloud what she was going to do next. I said, "Well, the freaking dishes if she knows what's good for her." It didn't land and I've been sleeping on the couch for the past 2 weeks. 76, while watching TV, my wife said, "You know what I haven't watched in a while?" The correct answer was not, "Your weight." 77, when I was a teen, I told my girlfriend that she needs to watch out for trouser snakes in her dresser. Well, she ended up asking her dad to check for trouser snakes in her dresser because she might have them. 78, one hot summer day, my wife was out back tanning while I was doing some yard work. She was going to help me clean out the garden beds, but decided to relax instead. Her cell phone was in direct sunlight and got a bit too warm. She said, "Oh no, my phone is so hot it's not working." I replied, "Yeah, kinda like you." She was not pleased. 79, my wife said that since we're done having kids, I should get snipped. I joked that no, my second wife will probably want kids. She was mad for a week. 80, I said, "Wow, this world seems awesome," while watching Handmaid's Tale. 81, 20 years ago, I told my girlfriend, "I love you for many things, but the most are your wit and your charm." I then pointed at her chest and said, "See, I named the right one wit and the left one charm." She didn't see the humor. Not a great Thanksgiving dinner joke. 82, had a long-time girlfriend who was quite busty. We were drinking one night and I grabbed left boob and made a honking sound like a bike horn. Then I grabbed the other and made the same honks, but in a deeper tone, just having silly fun with them. She immediately burst out crying hard, saying it implied I thought they were misshapen or different sizes. Said I was being insensitive. 83, I tend to make cocky jokes when I am in a great mood. I told my wife once, "You know what? Sometimes you come to mind, and I think, how can one person be so lucky to have a partner who is this attractive, so smart, and still so humble? I think everyone else is jealous of you, and I wonder how you cope with being showered in second-hand attention just because of me." 84, her new haircut kind of resembled the Karen cut, so I said, "You look like you're on your way to finding a manager." She did not like that. 85, I was dating a beautiful woman with long, dark, thick, wavy hair. She was in her mid-40s and a little put off by the fact that she was losing so much hair. At the same time, she acknowledged that her hair was so thick that the hair she was losing wasn't even noticeable. So after dating for about a month or two, we had sex in my bed. Really great sex, it was perfect. Before she left, she playfully said that she wouldn't be surprised if I was to encounter some of her hair when I went to go make my bed. I laughed and told her that it didn't matter to me at all if I did. Later that day, I had the mischievous thought to jump on Google Images to see if I could find a photo of a hand holding a giant clump of hair. Much to my surprise, I stumbled across a photo of a hand that resembled mine and hair that looked like hers. Dead on. And we're not talking a few strands either, it was a massive collection. So I took a screenshot of the image, cropped it up perfectly, and sent her a text with the image captioned, "Wow, you weren't kidding." That did not go well. At all. 86, I told my girlfriend a joke my dad used to say. I told her she had kind hair. And while she was thanking me for the compliment, I said, "The kind you find on a dog's ass." She wasn't very happy. 87, mine was waking my wife up from a car nap with a nuke alert prank with air raids in the car radio telling us we have 10 minutes until impact. 88, my wife was obsessed with the missing Malaysian airline flight and I found it ripe for a prank. One day I told her, "The missing airplane has been found." And then led her to a white toy airplane I had hidden inside the home. Did not get the laughs. 89, I work as a pilot. One day I was busy setting up the aircraft for a flight. My girlfriend boarded the plane as a passenger and came up to the flight deck to say hi. When she saw the flight deck, she said there are way too many buttons and controls and she wouldn't know what to do with them, it'd be impossible for her to fly it. I responded with, "That's funny, I thought you'd be an expert pilot seeing that you know how to push my buttons all the time." My co-pilot found it hilarious, but she did not. 90. She and her friend were wondering why they were getting so many likes from India, as they're both from Europe and post in our native language. I turned around and said, "I can tell you why. It's because cows are holy over there." I slept on the couch that night. Totally worth it. 91. I asked my ex-girlfriend to go down the slide at a kid's playground we were walking past. She first said no, but I convinced her to go down the slide. As she started climbing the ladder, I yelled across the playground, "For Christ's sake, woman, grow up." 92. My wife is half Chinese. Whenever Chinese takeout is suggested for a meal, I always say, "I like Chinese, but I can only ever eat half." Her parents also didn't find this funny. 93. My girlfriend woke up upset because she was dreaming that I was cheating on her with Hayley Williams of the band Paramore. I asked her what happened and she said in her dream, "We kissed and just as I was being invited to her hotel room, she'd woken up." So I said, "Quick, go back to sleep." This was not appreciated. 94. My wife was cooking and asked me to grab the rolls. So I grabbed her stomach. 95. I called my Asian girlfriend my little fortune nookie. Fortunately, she has a sense of humor. 96. I went to England with my wife and after she got all dolled up for dinner, I used my best British accent and told her she looked like £1,000,000. She was not impressed. 97. I come up with dumb pet names every now and then. The other day, I called her my little sex turkey while holding hands, and she tried to break my fingers. I'd call it fair. 98. I started to tell her, "I like my women how I like my coffee." She replies with a giggle, "Black?" I say, "No, icy and bitter." 99. She was mad at me for something and started nagging, so I pointed the TV remote at her to try and mute her. 100. My girlfriend asked me if her dress made her look fat. I told her no, it's her fat that makes her look fat. 101. We were out for dinner and the server, who was a woman, was being a little flirty, which I didn't notice at the time. My girlfriend said, "Oh, I bet that's your other girlfriend," and I replied, "Well, you can't have chicken every night." That did not end well that night. 102. Wife has a white Labrador mix. I had a terrible fear of dogs growing up and pretty much didn't like them. But her lab was the most loving, instinctively intelligent dog ever. Needless to say, I and the lab ended up bonding quite a bit. The wife and I were just hanging out one night watching a show, laughing, having a good time, drinking some wine, and I don't remember how the conversation happened, but I say, "Don't worry, babe. You're my second favorite white witch." 103. My ex-wife asked for her mother's phone number. I quickly gave it to her, as I had it committed to memory. She said, "It's kind of awful you have that memorized and I don't," and I said, Well, it's understandable. I'm in men's room stalls a lot more often than you are." She was unamused. 104. She told me that I have the emotional capacity of a robot, and it's an issue in our relationship. I replied in a robot voice, "Does not compute." 105. We were watching TV and there was an ad for some fitness thing, and the slogan was something about, "Get into shape for summer." She proposed that she should get into shape. I told her she was already in shape for summer, the shape of a beach ball. 106. I stayed in a hotel with my then girlfriend after we couldn't get a taxi home. We were taking the elevator down to reception the next morning, and both of us looked bad and were still in our previous night's clothes. The elevator stops and 2 more people get in. I turn to my girlfriend and say, "What was your name again?" 107. When they were dating, my mom, 5 foot 10 inches tall, told my dad she would meet him in the city. He asked how he'll find her apart from the other buildings. She was mad decades later, and I am surprised I am here. 108. Early in our relationship, I was on a date with my now wife and for some silly reason, aka beer, I thought it would be funny to convince her I was really an alien in human form, and that I was here to examine Earth culture and report back to my leadership. I was dead serious saying it and she was really freaked out. We've been married for over 20 years. She still reminds me of this joke. Still makes me chuckle. 109, oof. So in college I was on my way to see a movie with my friend. Before we left, my GF said, "Drive safe." And I hilariously, said, "Never," because comedy anyway. Fast forward to the theater and I get a funny idea to pretend we got in a little fender bender. So I found a picture of the same model car online in an accident and texted my GF saying, "Goof," but got no response. So I shrug and head into the theater and wait for a reply. Nothing. Then the movie is about to start and I totally forget about the prank and silence my phone and start enjoying the movie. Fast forward 2.5 hours later and she has called me 100 times and left voicemails crying and freaking out that I was injured or dead, and her family was calling me too and so worried. I called her back and was like, that was a joke, and she was pissed.